România nu este o destinație turistică recunoscută pentru că mesajele de promovare pe care le trimite spre public sunt confuze. Nu ne-am hotărât încă dacă ne reprezintă Dracula sau Delta Dunării și străinii nu înțeleg prea bine ce să caute aici mai întâi. Dar este o soluție, ecoturismul, cu ajutorul căruia România poate deveni o destinație de top. Primim explicații de la invitații mei de astăzi. Sunt Cristina Cileacu. Începe Pașaport diplomatic. Charlie Ottley, welcome to Diplomatic Passport.
Thank you.
You promote wild Romania, but since we are talking about the ecotourism, do you think that being wild is enough to do good tourism?
No, it's not. And I never sort of say it's exclusively wild Romania. For me, it's cultural Romania and wild Romania. In every film that we've made, we've tried to find a balance between cultural tourism, which is a very, very big draw for Romania, and adventure and eco-travel and nature travel that we have here. Romania has 2/3 of the remaining surviving apex predators in Europe. It's got probably the largest biodiversity left in Europe. It's got the largest mixed forests left in Europe, and it's got the Carpathians. And also, lest we forget, because most people do, it's got the Danube Delta, which is the greatest wetland in Europe, and never seems to get promoted properly internationally. So, which is hence why we made Wild Danube last year, and I'm very much hoping that we'll be able to get that in front of an international audience now it's been seen domestically. But Romania also has fantastic castles. Okay, they're not necessarily as well preserved as the ones in Spain or Italy, for example, because they have more money and there's more investment. The ministries of culture there see the importance of preserving and restoring these old buildings and keeping them alive. But we have a bit of a legacy from Ceausescu here, which was old is bad, in with the new. So we're losing beautiful old villages, which should be historic villages and maybe even UNESCO in many cases. But people are building concrete and cement guest houses, and it's very ironic. You get places like Breb, which was a wooden village. There are so many modern concrete pensions in Breb, you can barely see the wooden village anymore. And the danger of this, of course, is shooting yourself in the foot. Because in due course there won't be a wooden village, but there'll be a lot of pensions that people have built for people to come and see the wooden village, which no longer exists. This is happening in my village in Șerna, which was the first touristic village under Ceausescu, the only one I think, and we're fighting to preserve the Romanian wooden mountain architecture there. But these communities and these monuments that Romania has in such strength are getting lost at, over 100 a year at the moment is the current rate. And this is the future for cultural tourism. If we don't hang on to our patrimony and our heritage, we lose it, and we lose a very, very vital source of revenue for all the guest houses and all the people and all the hotels and for the country itself. So it's very important that ecotourism and wild tourism matters. But that's also about limiting development and also maintaining or managing sustainable forestry. Because if we start, building into the national parks and putting up more lodges and more pensions and making more areas intravillan, then the parks are going to shrink, and with that the biodiversity will shrink, and that's a terrible shame. I mean, I personally feel that we shouldn't be doing any commercial logging in national parks at all. And if there is any logging that needs to be done for safety reasons or what have you, then that wood should go to the local people who are struggling to find legal wood to put in their central heating systems to keep warm throughout the winter. Because an awful lot of people in the countryside still have wood-fired central heating systems, including us. And I can tell you how hard it is to try to find sustainably sourced wood just to stay warm so you don't freeze or die of exposure.
Charlie, you keep on saying we are losing, we are not doing,
yeah.
You moved in Romania.
Yeah, I mean, unless I'm kicked out, I'm a resident.
You're a resident.
I'm a resident.
Half Romanian.
I'd like to be a citizen, but I don't think my Romanian will be up to it. I struggle with reciting the national anthem and things like that.
Okay, fingers crossed for that. The question is, you already travel inside Romania quite a lot. You know the country. maybe
yeah.
better than more Romanians sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, I've been making films here for 10 years.
Exactly. So, of course, you deal with our authorities during these filmings. How do you find the interest of our authorities when it comes to preserving all these topics you already mentioned?
Well, I mean, I don't really get a lot of feedback from them. I mean, take the Ministry of Tourism. We actually got an invitation to see them today, just before they left, before my speech. But they did invite us to come down to Bucharest. So, you know, we will obviously try, because we don't have any political allegiances. I don't care who's in charge, just as long as someone is in charge and they stay in charge for long enough to get something done. Because very often we have ministries that come and go and ministers that come and go, and by the time they've had X number of focus groups, research, think tanks, discussions, panels, everything else, there's probably a change of government. And so, or the budget's gone to something else. And so there's very little opportunity for the Ministry of Culture, say, or the Ministry of Tourism, to come up with a long-term strategy, because there is no long-term in Romanian politics. When we were opening up after COVID, I asked the Ministry of Tourism to give us the money to put on a big campaign on BBC World. I negotiated a spectacular discount of 30% with BBC World, and in the end they just couldn't. The legislation didn't allow them to do that. Very often they can't pay for something in advance, so they have to pay after it's delivered. And of course, TV stations and exhibitions and what have you don't operate like that. So we took it upon ourselves to do something privately. So we went to private investors, and we got a number of companies to invest, and we raised 45,000, and we did a campaign which involved us rebranding the country. I find it slightly bizarre to this day that as an Englishman living here, I'm rebranding a nation to the world with no assistance, not that actually that would have necessarily benefited from it, from the then Ministry of Tourism. But we went ahead and we did it. We created a new brand, you know, Journey to the Wild Side, the wild corner of Europe, which, of course, that's a grabber for people when you've had COVID and people are worried about rubbing shoulders with crowds. You know, they're not going to go to Paris or they're not going to go to Milan. But if they can go to a lonely mountain or a remote village or a dark sort of medieval forest, then that's an appealing thing for people. So we made 4 films and we ran them for a month. And the survey that was done on behalf of the BBC, which they do for new clients, because Romania had never been on before, was that there was a 91% uptake in viewers who want to come to Romania or who would recommend Romania to their friends. So it was a massive coup. I mean, it was one of the best international campaigns ever done in the country, but we had to do it. And that frustrates me. You know, why are we having to do this? You know, even now, you know, we've offered to help, and maybe we will have a chance to help, but it's not really in some ways it's not really their fault. It's a system. It's not individuals. I'm not calling out individuals here. I want, if they're watching, I want them to know that. But the system is geared to make it almost impossible to actually be decisive and come up with a coherent long-term strategy, because you get a budget that's only for 2 or 3 months, and then if you don't spend it, and you have to have the results during that period of time as well, which is impossible. Yeah. Because if we were to start planning a strategy to be promoting Romania in October and November on BBC World, say, which is what we're going to try and do for 2023, any time after that is too late, then you have to start planning it now, and you have to have the films. Luckily, we've got all the films, and we want to make one for the Danube Delta as well. As the Amazon of Europe, because that's the brand. You know, I mean, I've thought about it long and hard. I can tell you the Amazon of Europe is the brand for the Delta. And we need to be planning that now and paying the money, because they won't book the space. They simply physically can't book the airtime unless they get paid. And the ministry don't have the ability to do that, and they have to spend that money, as I've said, in a short period of time. Otherwise, it gets reabsorbed by the system. So this prohibits the government from making any long-term strategy to help the country. And if you add into that ministers and ministries come and go, you know, at a rate of knots. We spoke to 2 previous ministries to this one, and both of them wanted us to be advisors, consultants, and to date, not this one, but the OSRE Plus one wanted us to be the official consultants for the Ministry of Tourism, and then they all resigned. And then the PNL came in, and they were interested in working with us, and we were putting together plans. We had a great meeting with PNL for doing this, because, as I say, I don't mind who's in charge. Someone just has to get on with it. We came back, and by the time we got back from the meeting, after a 3-hour drive, the government had dissolved. So you can feel my, my frustration. It's very, very hard if we keep running around the houses and rearranging the deck chairs while the Titanic is sinking. We need to actually have people allowed to do that job. They've got to stay in power long enough to do that job, and they have to have the right people there to help them do it.
Well, you choose this country to live, so it's...
I know. I've only got myself to blame, as my mother always said.
The last question is about, let's say, a link between the British and Romanian, because you're not the only British that is promoting Romania. Of course, the royal family is also promoting. Prince Charles, Prince of Wales, is present here almost every year for a very long period of time. Why do the Brits see something in Romania and Romania doesn't seem to see it itself?
I think Romania suffers from terrible low self-esteem as a country, which is very dangerous because it makes us very cynical about anyone who does like Romania or is idealistic or at least believes in it and its potential. Most people, they don't believe. They've been let down by their government many times, over and over again. They've been, the media are in the pockets of the government in many cases as well, so they can't trust the media. In the UK, we can. We have very independent media. So Romanian people don't really know who to trust. So they're cynical about a lot of things. People here are cynical. They don't know how things can change, and they don't see any real effort being made to make decisive positive change. Whereas the Brits don't know anything about that. They just come here and go, wow, it's so beautiful. Lots of people here don't see any value in milking a cow or taking a horse and cart ride. English do. And people that live in cities, they come out here. Kids would just die to get up in the morning, even if it's at 5. They're usually awake screaming at their parents' door by 6 anyway. So they wake up early and they get to milk a cow. How amazing is that, Daddy? And, and that's a wonderful added value experience. And a lot of guest houses and pensions don't actually recognise what they have on their doorstep. They're putting toast bread from a supermarket cold on the plate in the morning with a cold boiled egg. And yet down the road there's a woman making bread. Somewhere else there's someone making fresh sausages. Or smoking bacon, and cheese, beautiful homemade cheese. And all these things, all these added value things that we have in Romanian villages in the countryside should be brought to bear and part of the experience that tourists have when they come here.
Charlie, thank you for promoting and sustaining Romania.
Cu drag. My pleasure.
You are an expert in ecotourism, and in Romania we don't have a very developed tourism, and I don't know, I have to be honest with you, how developed we are in this area of ecotourism. So what is ecotourism?
Actually, maybe you're more developed than you think of, because many things that I know in Romania, in the Danube Delta, in the Carpathians, are kind of ecotourism. The concept originally comes from the 60s, last century. And at that time it was simply defined as every tourism that goes to nature, to protected area. But it developed very much further, and today we have, I don't know, hundreds or more than 100 different definitions. But what's common in all these definitions is that ecotourism is more than nature. It includes environment, it includes local culture, local population. It includes always kind of educational aspects, so tourists learn something about the nature, about the culture. And it tries really to bring benefits, social benefits, financial benefits to the locals. That's important. And of course it tries to use the nature and the environment as asset, but it always tries to protect and to, if possible, even improve the nature and the environment.
We are developed because we didn't do nothing for tourism in order to grow it up, like the Western country, let's say, did, or because of the fact that we are still keeping, let's say, the nature more or less as wild as we can keep it?
Well, it's a mixture of everything. On the one hand, you do have really very nice protected areas. You do have remote areas. You have partly rather authentic traditional cultures. Those are really assets for ecotourism. You develop in the country concrete criteria for ecotourism and ecotourism destinations. This is something really you can base up. On the other hand, what's missing from my perspective is a little bit this overall comprehensive approach. You know, the image of Romania abroad is different. And
Different how?
if you on the one hand market Vlad Tepes and Dracula and the castle, or if some unplanned development in building structures, in suppliers that on the one hand do ecotourism, on the other hand do hunting tourism, or four-wheel off-road tours and kind of game watching, which is not ecotourism. So it's not a comprehensive overall clear image. So I think the Europeans are a little bit confused actually. They see that some parts of Romania would like to go more towards ecotourism, but not the whole destination, not the whole country is really having this clear image. I think, yeah, people are confused, and I think the overall the quality, the professionality in the product development, and especially then in the destination management, could be improved. You would need more training, you would need clearer tasks for destination, especially for ecotourism.
Why diplomacy is supporting this type of activities and this concept of ecotourism?
Coming from Austria, of course, tourism is of utmost importance for my country, and it is quite clear that the future of tourism has to do with ecotourism, with sustainability. Sustainability is at the center of the Austrian national tourism strategy. And as ambassadors and diplomats, of course, this is an issue that is also very important that we deal with. As you know, this conference was organized in the framework of Refocus Austria. What is Refocus Austria? Last year in September, the Austrian government decided in view of the fact that COVID-19 pandemic had a real effect on the economy to engage in a restart and in a comeback plan for the economy. And well, of course, the diplomatic representations worldwide of Austria contribute to it, together with the Advantage Austria from the Federal Economic Chamber and with the companies and other ministries. And so also for diplomacy, it is very important. Diplomacy has changed a lot. Nowadays, we talk a lot about public diplomacy, about all kinds of diplomacy, and definitely when you think about tourism, the sector that was hit very severely by the COVID-19 pandemic has of course been tourism, so for this reason in particular it is very important to contribute to it.
Get Boomer a diplomat in t-shirt, and on your t-shirt there is a message: the future is ecotourism. What do you mean?
Well, on the one hand side, Romania is a real beauty. The natural beauties that you have are just manifold, and they're there. You have like really rural areas, so you have like outskirts where nobody comes to, and it's not that developed. And on the other hand side, the society always looks more and more into environment, climate change. All those topics are very important right now. So I guess the people are going to get more and more conscious about the topics. And I think the more the off phase in ecotourism, the better it's going to get, and the bigger the sector is going to get. And especially as Romania has done some very, very good steps already towards ecotourism, I think that the potential is limitless.
How big should be this ecotourism in the big picture that is called tourism in Romania?
If I may say so, Romania is not known as the big tourism country, so you don't have this huge incoming international tourism. You're not known as such a strong destination, so I think that instead of going for mass tourism, like on some coastal areas in some other countries it is the case, Instead of going for mass tourism, I guess you really have the potential to go for some individual tourism, some nice tourism, ecotourism, and that's why we say the future definitely is ecotourism.
But then the money will be as much? People think about...
Are we doing everything only for money? I don't think so. Plus, if you look at Via Transilvanica, we have Tashulia Social here, and yeah, with Julia Mureșan, we talked about it, and she said, on this hiking trail, you know, it's not the high spenders, so to say, it's not the tourism that brings the most money into the country, but they need to eat, they need to drink, they need to sleep there, and the local people can actually build up their small businesses in Horeca or other sectors. They can build up their small businesses and make their money in a rural area where actually right now all the people are moving out. So it has positive effects for the people themselves and for the economy.
So the earning is not in money, but it's rather in helping communities and develop them.
Yes, in ecotourism this is a very big part. If you look at Via Transilvanica, the 1,400 kilometer long distance hiking trail, then that's definitely correct, that you help the communities more, you help the local people much more than you actually help the GDP of Romania.
We had in this program as well, Charlie Ottley, you brought him here at the conference. We had the Austrian ambassador, you are also an Austrian diplomat. Why the foreigners are so keen to make us open the eyes and see what treasure we have?
If you have tourism, the base of tourism is environment. So that is what we showed here, and we think that Romania deserves kind of such a conference and the help also from the Austrians. We spoke about the attractions and amenities and also accessibility, which means you need accessibility, you need the roads, you need the railroad, you need the airports and so on. So also ecotourism partially comes with that. You have to have the infrastructure and everybody has to work together. So we also included the public side. The Ministry of Tourism worked with us and was here present. And I think that it is an effort that can only be done together.
Atât pentru astăzi, dar rămânem în continuare online pe pagina de Facebook a emisiunii și pe contul nostru de Twitter. Revenim cu subiecte noi din lumea diplomației și a politicii externe, vinerea viitoare de la 11:30 și reluare sâmbătă după miezul nopții. La revedere!